Good morning. The hearing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Wednesday, August 21st, 2019. The time is 9 o'clock a.m., and we are meeting in the hearing board room in Diamond Bar. We have one matter on the calendar for this today, which is OC Waste and Recycling case number 6151-1, and today we are hearing this matter for an interim variance. And who is representing OC Waste and Recycling?
Do I need to push the button?
You do. Just make sure anyone who's speaking that your microphone light is lit, and pull it to you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Alberian. I'm a deputy county counsel with the County of Orange, and I am representing Waste and Recycling.
Thank you. And Mr. Alberian, can you please spell your name for the record?
Sure. Last name is Alberian. A-L-B as in boy, A-R-I-A-N as in Nancy.
Thank you very much. And who is representing the executive officer this morning?
Stacy Pruitt for the executive officer.
Morning, Ms. Pruitt.
Good morning.
At this time, I'm just going to ask anyone who wishes to testify this morning, including any members of the this is not a noticed hearing, but anyone who wishes to testify this morning to please rise at this time to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Before we begin, Mr. Alberian, given the what you have submitted as attachments to your petition, I understand that you are familiar with the 6 findings we need to make for a variance today. But before we get there, because this is an interim variance and because we are hearing, or we need to determine whether we can hear this matter this morning in absence of notice to the public. So what we need to do is bifurcate the hearing today so that we're going to begin with a determination as to whether we have good cause to proceed in the absence of notice to the public. And I'm just going to quickly go over with you what the elements are that we need to hear from you in this first phase of the hearing for good cause, to determine whether there is good cause to proceed. And in that fashion, we need to understand, very similar to the first finding for a variance, but a little more stringent, is that you are in violation or violation is imminent, which temporally is a lot more stringent than the first finding for a variance. We also need to hear testimony regarding the circumstances that led to this violation could not reasonably have been avoided by the petitioner or anticipated in sufficient time to provide for public notice. So it's very similar to the beyond reasonable control, or in the alternative that you could have anticipated in time to have notice to the public. We're also looking to see that diligence in petitioning for an interim variance, that you exercised that diligence, which meant that you did it as quickly as you knew or should have known that you might need relief. And we need to hear that a denial of an interim variance today would result in an unreasonable and unavoidable adverse impact to petitioner, or an increase, I think that might be relevant here, in the emissions of air pollutants, an adverse impact to air quality, or an adverse impact on public health or welfare. And so those are the more limited elements that we need to hear moving forward.
Thank you.
Did you need me to repeat anything? But we have some questions you could answer as you go along as well.
I appreciate the kind of rundown, and I've taken notes, so at the appropriate time, I'll respond.
Okay, and so what we'll do is I'm going to ask you if you can give a brief opening on good cause, on the elements I just outlined. Then I'm going to turn to Ms. Pruitt for an opening on the district's position with regard to good cause. And then I'm going to ask if you can introduce your witnesses for whatever testimony we need regarding the good cause findings. And same if Ms. Pruitt has any well, she'll ask questions, we'll ask questions, but also then Ms. Pruitt will introduce any witnesses she may have for good cause. we'll take closing, and then we will deliberate and determine whether we can move forward with the findings on the merit, with the hearing on the merits. Any questions before we proceed?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so at this time, if you would like to make a brief opening statement in terms of good cause.
Thank you. Focusing on the elements of, well, first of all, I'd just like to thank you guys for hearing us and coming out this morning. I know we're the only one on calendar. The elements of good cause that I believe are here, just as a brief background, Waste and Recycling is in charge of managing 3 active landfills as well as numerous closed landfills. Landfills produce methane gas, and depending on the amount of methane gas that is being produced, there are different types of collection equipment that is used to ensure that that landfill gas does not go out into the atmosphere. At issue here is a facility or a site known as Coyote Canyon, which does have significant landfill gas that is created there based on the waste decomposing. And we have what's called a flare system that is connected to a collection system of pipes where it sucks that methane gas up to the flare system and burns it off so it's not detrimental to air quality or the health and safety. It also protects neighboring properties which exist there's a high school nearby as well as residences. It protects the plume of landfill gas from spreading beyond the borders of the landfill. So that's the purpose of the equipment that we have, and that equipment is operated based on electricity 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're required to do that legally, otherwise we would be in violation of other AQMD rules. So when electricity is shut down, the site has emergency generators or an emergency generator, which is the subject of this petition. Because the site operates 24/7, if the power is shut off, that necessarily means that the generator needs to be turned on in order to comply with our other regulatory requirements. So the first good cause that was laid out is that we are either in violation or violation is imminent. As I've pointed out in the petition, we were recently notified by Southern California Edison of a change in policy, that they are now going to actively or proactively turn off power to sites that are in high fire risk areas during weather conditions such as Santa Ana winds. And this has to do with some of their other issues with fires and liability. So they have really taken a change and they've notified the agency. Staff has met with Southern California Edison on several occasions wherein Edison has really expressed concern. They want to make sure we're taking steps to address the likelihood of power being shut off at the site. We've informed them about our efforts here with the Southern California AQMD to get some variance, and that they were comforted by that. That being said, we are not currently in violation. We have sufficient hours right now. We're not about to exceed those hours. The problem is that we are a 24/7 operation, and 200 hours right now we have, I believe, at the end of the month we will have only used 12 hours on the generator, and that seems like maybe not a lot. However, that's only 7.5 days of operation. And we have been, so I don't think, one, the low amount of usage, we're not in violation now, but it is imminent in the sense that SCE is very likely going to turn off the power at the site, and it's going to require increased usage of the generator such that I think historical usage at the site is not going to be an accurate portrayal. At the very least, we are being proactive because we don't want to get into trouble. And we think we are taking a responsible tact by trying to do this preemptively. But it is imminent in the sense that we are in fire season now. We are just at the beginning of the point where everything is able to go up. And we know that SCE is trigger happy and they're very nervous. And as such, we believe that there is an imminent, very likely possibility that we could go over the 200 hours. Lastly, the agency has to make plans. It is not able to wait. If the interim variance is denied today, we do recognize that we have a regular variance in October scheduled. The problem is the fire season is now, and we don't have the opportunity or the luxury of being denied today and waiting until October to figure out whether or not we're going to have a variance approved. So that's the urgency. That is the imminent nature of this.
And Mr. Alberian, you could just briefly summarize the rest, and you can leave it to, because we're going to have to go through this with your witnesses.
Okay.
So if you want to just make it brief, and then we can move on to the witness phase.
Thank you. And would you like me to go through the remaining elements or just that first one right now?
If you'd like to, just briefly, you can
Okay,
do that, but just know that your witnesses will cover it.
I will do so. The circumstances that led or could not be anticipated is the fact that we were approached by SCE and they had advised us of this new policy. So it's really out of our control. They're in control, and they're not even in control of the weather. Diligence, I believe we quickly filed. We assessed the situation. We did some research into the practicality and reasonableness of renting alternative generators. That was very costly and didn't seem to make sense, which is why we then promptly filed this petition with you. Denial would result in unreasonable impacts or potential increases in air pollutants. As you pointed out, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a landfill that produces methane gas 24/7. We don't have control. We can't turn off production and then turn it back on. We're not in the business of making money. We're in the business of protecting the public's health and safety. So a denial of this would or could result in increases in air pollutants from landfill gas going into the atmosphere. That would be the worst case scenario. We would try to take steps that would not happen. But so I believe that we have met the good cause standard, and I will yield, but available for any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alberian. Before I turn to Ms. Pruitt for your opening on good cause, I just want to, I should have stated at the beginning that we are normally a 5-member board. One of our board members, as of late yesterday, informed us that he would not be available today, and there were no alternates, so we are a 4-member board today. And also, I just wanted to remind board members that we can follow along the good cause findings in tab 2 of our hearing board reference manual. At the end is where we have the findings we need to make for good cause. Ms. Pruitt, your opening on good cause.
Good morning. The district is opposed to the granting of this variance because, well, first of all, we don't believe that good cause has been met. This is speculative. There are 200 hours that they may use in a year, and to date, they have used 11. We're not even close to the 200 hours. And granting this would have and in essence, gotten rid of the notice requirement, which is number 1 tenet of the law. And in this particular instance, the language used by Orange County Waste is that they'd like to proactively seek a variance. And, you know, unfortunately, I think that an interim variance is not the tool that they should be using now, because it's like an insurance policy. This is not imminent. They don't know that this will happen. It's just in case it happens, we would like this. And that's not what the purpose of this is. As well, this is not new. This is not the first time that Edison has shut down power. This is a formalization of them shutting down power in the future and giving notice to everyone. It's been done before. I think that the fact that they are not in violation at this point and nowhere near being in violation, to say that it's imminent, but to say also that it's a likely possibility, the two don't go together. It is not imminent, and if he were in the situation where they were up against the wall of 200 hours, there's always the emergency variance that he could use, which would be the proper tool. But at this time, this is all speculative, and that's why the district's position is that we must oppose this, because this would open up an entire new can of worms for other agencies, other people coming in, perhaps at the beginning of the year saying, well, just in case, let us have this in our back pocket. And that's not the purpose that the interim is for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pruitt. Mr. Alberian, at this time, if you'd like to introduce your first witness on good cause.
Sure. I have with me Warisa Nizawa, who is a senior professional engineer in environmental services at Waste and Recycling. And I also have Jeff Arbor, who is the environmental services manager at Waste and Recycling.
Are you planning to introduce and ask questions, or at this time, do either of your witnesses have statements to make, or are you leaving it to the board and Ms. Pruitt to ask the questions?
One moment, okay?
Okay.
Hello? Okay.
Oh, and before you begin, if you could restate your name and spell it for the record, also indicate that you did take the oath this morning when I administered it, and if you could tell us your title.
My name is Warisa Nizawa, W-A-R-I-S-A, Nizawa, N-I-I-Z-A-W-A, and I took the oath this morning. Is that right?
And your title.
My title is Senior Professional Engineer. I just
you.
have one comment to add to what Paul had said earlier, is that
And before you say if you have one comment to add, we will need a recitation of everything that was in the opening unless you would like to take the oath today, because otherwise it is not evidence on which we can rely.
I am more than happy to take the oath and have my testimony be part of the record.
Okay, and would you be willing then to take questions? And do you have firsthand knowledge of what you testified to? And if not, it probably would be better if it could be restated by the firsthand witnesses.
Okay, we'll do it that way. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
So if you would like to try to recap kind of what I said.
okay.
Here's the good cause. Violation is imminent. Circumstances that we couldn't predict, that we quickly filed, and that it would result in unreasonable.
The reason why we think that violation is imminent is because in the past, we have never had, if we were to compare the amount of usage that we have in the past to this year, if we were to just have 7 shutdowns by Southern California Edison, we would definitely be over the 200 hours. And we could not have anticipated the shutdown, as in the notice that they were supposed to give us is supposed to be a very short period of time, and therefore we filed for the interim variance. The denial would result in unreasonable increase in air pollution, because if we don't have the emergency generator, then there's a good likelihood that there might be an emission, whether it be surface emission or migration, which can cause economic impact to our department because there are homes and schools all around the site. What I'd like to add that's a little different from what Paul had said earlier was that, yes, there's an option of renting the emergency generator, but the cost for renting generator is very high, and we don't believe that renting the generator will reduce air pollution or emission. Yeah. We could not have anticipated the notice from SCE as we have never had that shutdown in the past from them. Or the reason why we quickly file for the interim variance is to be diligent and to make sure that we can continue the operation of our landfill gas collection system. And we don't have the luxury to wait until October for the variance because obtaining the generator takes time. And to connect the new generator to the system also takes time. Therefore, we believe that the interim variance is the best course of action and the most responsible thing to do for us. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pruitt, do you have any questions for Ms. Nizawa?
Yes, thank you. How many hours have you used so far this year?
We've used 12 hours this year.
And do you have any information that would tell you how many additional hours you might need by the end of the year?
We will definitely need at least, let's see, so we use about an hour, half an hour for each month. So September, November, December. At least 4 more hours for the testing. This is just for the testing of the generator. This is not using the generator in an emergency situation.
So if you add the 4 hours to the 12, that's 16 hours that you are sure that you will use.
Yes,
And that means that you would have roughly 180 hours left at least, correct?
correct. And if I were to compare, however, to my other sites where we had some shutdowns in the past, the usual shutdown takes about 5 or 6 hours,
Okay.
which means if I have 7 shutdowns,
Thank you. So do you have any actual knowledge about a shutdown or the length of a shutdown that might occur, or is it purely speculative?
we don't have an actual knowledge.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Were you involved in the notification? How did SCE notify OC Recycling? Waste, sorry, OC Waste and Recycling. Oh, are we going to introduce another witness?
Okay.
If you don't know, just let us know you don't know, and then we'll move on to the other witness.
We were notified by Southern California Edison on,
If you do not know the answer, we will wait for the other witness, for the next witness. Okay, so I take it, Ms. Nizawa, that you were not part of any meeting, or you were not personally notified, or don't have firsthand knowledge of it. And if you don't, we'll move on to the other witness at the appropriate time.
I was in a meeting.
Oh, you were in the meeting?
I was.
Do you know what the date was, or?
I'm trying to remember what date was.
Okay. Again, if you don't know, we'll ask the next.
I June 20th.
June 20th. Okay, then can you explain the delay in 2 months of waiting to file? What did you do in the 2 months between June 20th and I see that, oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't 2 months, I'm looking at the date today. August 14th. So between June 20th and August 14th, which is almost 2 months, what, rather than filing for the variance at that time, what was OC Waste and Recycling involved in doing during that time?
Well, first thing we did was we researched into renting the generator and trying to figure out how much it's going to cost. And being a public agency, it is not very easy for us to go out and just rent an equipment. We have to go through a fairly long procurement process. And that took us a little while to figure out how much it was going to cost and how we're going to connect it. It also take a little time for us to come up with a check, believe it or not. Again, that takes time, and I sent.
Did you meet the check for filing for the variance, or yeah, okay.
And I submitted the draft petition to County Council for review, and we have to go through our internal review process, and that's what takes a lot of time.
Is there any process that is in place for emergency events in terms of cutting checks or?
We do have that process, however, being that it takes about 2 to 3 days to cut the check.
And that's with the emergency process
That's with
in
the emergency
place?
process.
Okay, so if it went through an emergency process, it would take about 2 to 3 days.
Correct.
But you did not go through the emergency process in this instance?
We had to cut 2 checks because the change in the timing. And the fees changed, because the fee schedule changed on July 1st, and this was in between.
So you testified, Ms. Nizawa, that you were in the meeting with SE, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you recall, to the best of your ability, how that meeting went in terms of what specifically you were told would occur?
Don't remember that part. You want to take that on?
If you would like to pass
I
to the
don't
next
remember
witness.
that part.
Okay, then we'll wait for the next witness. I don't have any other questions, board members. Mr. Balagopalan, and then Dr. Bernstein.
Ms. Nizawa, you mentioned a shutdown typically lasts 5 to 6 hours. Is that?
If we have another site that have some shutdown with Southern California Edison, and occasionally it takes about 5 or 6 hours during the day. That's how they usually do it. Now it could last longer, depends on the fire.
Do you recall what the issues were for that shutdown, or was
High
it
wind,
high wind? So they
Yes.
notified you preemptively that
occasionally they don't.
they don't? And
They
okay,
just shut it down, and usually high wind condition will cause shutdown for us.
and you're in this particular canyon landfill is in a high wind area.
I don't know.
So if it happens though, then a typical shutdown, let's say, take 10, 12 hours, and then have you had a situation where it went for days in the other locations?
No,
No. So your concern is if you have 7 of these incidents, then it might be you'll reach over the 200 hours cumulatively at a period of time.
correct.
How do we do that math? You're saying 5 to 6 hours, 7 shutdowns is 35 to 42 hours?
Correct. So 5 to 6 hours, that's just one shutdown. Yes, we don't,
Right, times 7 is 35 to 42.
Correct, but we don't expect just 7 shutdowns. It could be more, and that's what we're not sure of. And the reason why I thought of 5 and 6 is because usually if they were to shut it down, it would be mostly during the day, imagining, because that would be a high fire risk time. And
Are you familiar with the, when you were investigating the process, did you look into the process for filing for an emergency variance?
yes, we have. We looked into that, and it was decided that in an event that it will take longer for us to, so we also have a plan in December to install an underground power line so that we don't have to shut down in case of high fire. So we figured if we get the interim variance in place, that way, after December, we will no longer need the variance because we will have the underground power line.
Yeah, I think your petition said it might be online by February next year.
February? Okay, yeah.
So my question is back to the emergency variance, and are you familiar with that process?
Yes,
And so, and hypothetically, if there was a shutdown and you could file, I think as Ms. Pruitt said, for an emergency variance if you're getting very close to the 200 hours. And is that something that you can do proactively and get a check cut beforehand so that you don't have to wait so you have a check on hand that is good for 6 months and you can file it when you need it?
the reason why we decided to file the variance earlier and not filing the emergency is because we're planning ahead, and we also don't want to run into a risk of getting a denial with the emergency variance. Because by that time it will be too late.
Yeah, I appreciate that you've been proactive, but I think to find good cause, we have to find a violation, which there isn't one right now, or an imminent, that the likelihood is very high that you'll be in violation. Your hours are very, it's typical hours for testing. So in the event in a fire or a high wind, you have to shut down and your usage goes up, you will have a certain amount of time to file for it. My question is, if you have a check already cut, and if you need to file for emergency variance, can you do that? Does your agency allow you to go and have a check ready before so it's on hand, and the moment you know you need to actually file for emergency variance, because you're very close to 200 hours, you can do so?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Bernstein, and then Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Thank you. Good morning. I just, again, wanted to clarify the numbers. Again, because of the conditions that are required for us to go forward with a good cause, there has to be violation or imminent violation. So it seems to me, unless my math is off, and that wasn't my strongest point, biology was, that you have a lot of cushion, particularly with the fact that the work has already begun on the underground power line. Is that correct?
I believe that we're planning. We haven't started the work. Have we?
Well, it says
I'm sorry, may I
the
please,
construction
may I please ask that she speak from her own personal
Yes,
knowledge?
I agree. Ms. Pruitt is in a way objecting. Please, if you do not know the answer, say you do not know, we will move on to the next witness.
I don't know. I do not know. Thank you.
I'm just stating what it says on page 7 of the petition under item 23. It states that this construction has already been initiated, and it's been expected to be completed by February. So again, what we're doing is, apparently we're shrinking down the potential time frame that even further. And during that time frame, we have roughly utilized a total of, to date, number of hours, 16 hours. So we have 184 hours still to be utilized. We look at the math, it doesn't seem that there's going to be an imminent problem. And of course, as has already been stated by my colleague, there could be, if necessary, it seems that you could file an emergency.
Do you have a question, Dr. Bernstein?
I guess, no. Thank you.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said that you were in that meeting with Edison. How many people from your agency and how many people from their utility were there?
I do not remember.
Okay. Did they provide you with any documentation regarding whether you were in the high-risk area? Did they show you a map?
I do not remember.
Did they give you any documentation regarding what this is really called as Bulletin 322 of the Public Safety Power Shutoff? Did they give you anything to fall back on, to look at?
Yes, we received we were looking at the notice, the original notice. That's what I remember.
Okay, but you did not provide that to us. And when I looked up the website that you referred to, there's no documentation in regards to how they are determining whether you are in the high fire risk area or not. So that's my question to you. Did they provide any map? Did they provide any documentation at all that said that you were in the high fire risk area? Or is that an assumption?
I believe they provided us with a notice.
Okay, but that's not in your
We
documentation
can,
to us.
and if you don't know and you don't recall, the
I don't
next,
recall, yeah.
next witness can, Ms. Verdugo Peralta can hold her questions with regard to that till we have that witness.
Okay.
The other question that I had, let me see. Okay, are you aware of what a sundowner is?
No.
Okay, that has to do with high wind, the time of day that they actually do have high winds in the areas when there is a fire. When they talked to you, did they talk to you about their notification process?
I do not remember that part.
Okay, I'll hold that for the next witness.
Any other questions for Ms. Nizawa before we move to the next witness? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Nizawa. Mr. Albarian, can you please introduce your next witness? And again, if you could state your name, spell it for the record, tell us your title, and indicate that you did take the oath today. We'd appreciate it.
The next witness is Jeff Arbor. He's the Environmental Services Manager for Orange County Waste and Recycling.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Arbor, Jeffarbor, Environmental Services Manager with OC Waste and Recycling. I took the oath this morning.
Okay, did you have any statements to make given the questions that were asked, or would you like to open it to questions?
I can help respond to some of the questions. I'll start with we had a meeting with SCE, if I recall correctly, it was on the 20th of June, and it was a phone conversation, a teleconference, and there were at least 6 SCE team members on the line and approximately 6 OC Waste and Recycling employees, if I remember correctly. And during that conversation, they verbally provided us with their concern with the risk of fire at the location of Coyote Canyon due to the brush in the area and the proximity to homes. And what they had informed us in that meeting was that they have a team that is going out evaluating power lines for risk, and as a result of recent activities in the north of California. And so they wanted to come out, they wanted to contact us in this form of a meeting to inform us of their concern and wanted to let us know that we should expect outages as a result of high fire weather conditions. They reported to us that they will do their best to notify us ahead of time. That was the extent of the commitment to notification, and they could not tell us to how early or how soon before the weather events they'd be able to notify us.
Thank you. Ms. Pruitt, do you have additional questions for Mr. Arbor?
No, thank you.
Board members, any additional questions? Ms. Verdugo-Peralta?
I'll go back to the same questions that I had for the other witness in regards, they did not provide you with any documentation. It was strictly a teleconference. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so in regards to notification, they did not discuss with you the 2-day notification, the 1-day notification, nor the emergency notification? Because that's in Bulletin 322.
Not that I recall.
Okay, so let's see. So there was no notification in regard, or no documentation at all. And they didn't notify you about the time frame that they normally have, which is the standard. And they did not provide you with any verification or explanation of the area that you were in. They say specifically to you, you are in a high fire risk area, because there is a map for that.
Yes, they
Okay.
did state that.
That's all I had at this moment.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Balagopalan?
Mr. Arbor, so who initiated the call? Was Edison who contacted your agency?
Correct. It was Stephen Tilk of Southern California Edison.
And so they wanted to discuss the potential of a fire hazard. Now, what did they say? So it's due to brush upwind from, and is it mainly due to that?
Yeah, it was due to the existing above-ground power lines that were installed in, I believe, 1988. And so they have concern with the proximity of those lines to brush and associated with the age of those lines. As Paul Alberian addressed earlier, we are in the process of a repower project, and that is to install a subsurface energy line which will allow us to de-energize the above-ground lines.
And did they discuss probability, whether there's a high probability, or they're just letting you be aware that in the case of an event, they will shut down the...
They did not give a probability. They said we should expect shutdowns during high fire weather events.
And what months do you typically, in your area, it's considered high fire months and potential high wind?
Typically, this is based just on my observations, usually from September through November.
Okay, so, and as far as you know, in August, there had been no incidents where they had shut down or there was fire or any reasons for them to shut down the power?
At Coyote specifically, not associated, to my knowledge, not associated with high fire risk weather events. Many shutdowns associated with work on the lines on Edison's grid.
And so when did you initiate the repowering project?
So technically, I mean, the process started, I believe, 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and groundbreaking will take place in September upon a permit awaiting, that we are waiting for, and I'm not the project manager, but this is the info I have, the permit we're waiting for from the city of Newport Beach.
And the completion is early part of next year, is that?
Estimated early February, hopefully earlier.
Okay. Now, is it in phases, or it has to be all completed before you can be totally independent of the overlay?
My understanding is it needs to be completed before we can de-energize the existing above-ground lines, so we can remove the fire risk.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know today what the historical usage, yearly usage is of this generator? How many hours you usually expend?
We did collect that data. I have it in my phone. I received a. Yeah, here we go. I can run from at least 2015 to date. 2015, 53 hours. 2016, 58.83 hours. 2017, 4 hours, 4.08 hours, I should say. 2018, 44.47 hours. And again, 2019, 11.33 to date.
And you are a high wind area, is that correct? During certain months?
During certain months.
Okay, so that would include usage even through high wind times?
Yes, I should clarify that we have not received notification or information suggesting that we've had our power shut down at Coyote due to weather in the past. The reason they said they were notifying us is because they were saying that we should expect it in the near future.
Because they're going to be they changed their policy and they will be more proactive.
That's what we were told.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Arbor? Okay. Thank you very much. So I see that you have no other witnesses, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Pruitt, do you have any any witnesses on good cause?
Yes, may I have one moment, please?
Yes.
Just briefly, I have a question for Charles Tupac, supervising engineer.
Okay.
The people called Charles Tupac, supervising engineer for AQMD. Mr. Tupac, were you sworn earlier this morning?
Yes, I was.
Thank you. And what is your title?
Supervising air quality engineer.
And what does that job encompass?
I assign and review permits to construct and operate in plans, and specifically in a team that handles waste management facilities such as the Coyote Canyon landfill.
And based upon the testimony that you've heard today, do you have an opinion on the calculations of how much they're using per month?
So based on their testimony of using up to the end of, 11 hours up till now and 12 hours up to the end of this month means that they're basically just doing approximately 25 minutes a month of maintenance and testing. And so extrapolating that out to the end of the year makes sense that they testified that they would use about 16 hours total for that through December.
Okay, nothing further, thank you.
Mr. Albarian, do you have any questions for Mr. Tupac?
I do not.
Board members, Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes, I do have to ask Mr. Tupac, have any other agency contacted you with similar concerns, or are there any ongoing discussions with other similar agencies that you have, permit?
Not to my knowledge, not to date.
Not today. Do you anticipate after this, or do you anticipate other agencies contacting you?
Objection calls for speculation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Tupac? Thank you, Mr. Tupac. Ms. Pruitt, any other witnesses you wish to present on good cause?
No, thank you, the district rests.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Albarian, if you would like at this time to give a brief closing statement on good cause, you may do so.
Thank you. I think the main thing that I would like to just comment on and reiterate regarding the urgency of this and looking at the big picture here is that while there are significant remaining hours on the current permit and generator usage, those hours could be eaten away very quickly. And as a public agency that is required to comply with regulatory and legal requirements on landfill gas control, the agency has to plan and make sure that it can comply with AQMD rules as well as other applicable rules. And in order to comply, we need certain certainty. And it's the only certainty we have is either spending the time and money associated with procuring a temporary generator in the event that we might need it, which will be cost to the taxpayer, really a waste with no corresponding benefit to air quality, or, as has been talked about today, to put, or at least implied, well, why didn't you do an emergency, or, you know, you don't really need an interim because it's not imminent. The problem is it is imminent because the change can happen quickly. And we can't wait to the last minute to do this because there's always the possibility, as there is today, for this board to say no. And if you say no now, there's nothing that would suggest that you'll say yes in October. And we are at a point now where we need to make sure that we have covered our bases. And I know council, wouldn't want to hear this, but I do believe that it's really a no harm, no foul here, because renting a temporary generator is going to result in the same amount of emissions as if we were to run it under a variance type situation. And if we don't end up needing it, then that's great. All we're trying to do is be responsible here, and we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place because we're required on one hand to control our landfill gas, to run that system 24/7, and on the other hand, we're being told we can't guarantee you whether or not we'll approve a variance for extended use of your generator. And it puts us in a hard position because we need to run the system no matter what. So I would say, looking at the big picture, granting this variance is really in the public's interest in a lot of ways. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Pruitt, your closing on good cause.
Thank you. Orange County Waste at this point has a request that's not yet ripe. They cannot show that it is imminent that they would be in violation. And they cannot overcome the procedural hurdle of showing good cause. They failed to produce any evidence that supports that they will be in violation in the future. In fact, Ms. Niyazawa stated that her shutdown data regarding the hours comes from a different site altogether, and she has none from Coyote Canyon. But assuming arguendo that we use her data, that it would take 5 to 6 hours, let's take 6 hours if there was a shutdown each day. And it would take 3 days to cut a check. That's 6 times 3 is 18 hours that they would be using. But that's not even an issue considering the fact that they can get a check in advance if there is an emergency. And they could come in for an emergency variance. And council stated that you could deny it now, which means you could also deny it then. Denying it now has everything to do with the timing. It has everything to do with the fact that it is not imminent at this point. And I would presume that that would be one of the bases for a denial. And if it became an emergency, it would be an entirely different set of circumstances. So I think that at this point, our position remains that they cannot substantiate good cause in this proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, I just wanted to begin by framing some issues for us to discuss. I wanted to state I don't believe we'll be able to find good cause, and that's different from being able to make the 6 findings for a variance on the merits. What we're looking at right now is there's no notice to the public of today's hearing. And again, the findings we need to make on this part of the proceeding is merely whether, as Ms. Pruitt pointed out, it's premature, it's not ripe. She used a legal term, but I think we all understand what ripe means generally. And so as a result, are we denying the ability of the public to have a say and to come to this public hearing, or to have a noticed hearing, and to testify should they want to do so, or at least to know the hearing's happening. But I wanted to start by saying that I do believe that petitioner here has a genuine concern in making sure that you're protecting the public. And I think you have all good intentions for coming as soon as you could and being proactive. But I do believe that should we grant or not grant, we're not up to that part, but should we find good cause to proceed in absence of notice to the public here for this set of circumstances, we would be setting a very bad precedent and going down a very dangerous path. Ms. Pruitt said the words, opening up a can of worms. And I think the reason why, number one, is because we've heard about this SCE policy, and it's very widespread. And so there are going to be many facilities which will be subject to it. And if we say, before you even started using your generator, other than for maintenance, you can come in and proactively get additional time, we would be bypassing notice in every case to the public. We would also be bypassing permitting process, because through the permitting process is where the 200 hours comes from, the limitation. So if we're saying, well, just come to us, even before these shutdowns begin, we're bypassing that altogether in addition to notice. I think in this case, sometimes we have had cases where, and in particular for generators, where you just don't know where that fine line is. Maybe you've got 100 hours and you've got a lot of shutdowns going on and you're going to go over it. And we got to figure out, well, are you prematurely here or should you have waited? But here I don't think it's really a close question at this point of timing. I don't think diligence was shown in this matter. Again, concern, very proactive. However, as we define diligence in filing for a variance, it took too long. Generally in our guidelines, we say petitioners who take days or weeks, here it was almost 2 months, to conduct testing programs, attempt remedies, such as looking into renting a temporary generator, confer with vendors, consult experts, meet with attorneys, so forth, they're not usually considered. And of course, we look at what usually means, but 2 months is a very long time, I think. And it just speaks to the fact that really it isn't imminent. And when you do the math, I did the math, and again, I'm an attorney, so I don't know how good my math is, but I believe 180 remaining hours, even if you take out maintenance and what you've used so far, 5 to 6 hour shutdowns, we could go 30 of those without reaching the 200 hours. And by the time you're getting close to that, the emergency variance and even ex parte emergency variance, where you don't have to wait for a hearing date, it goes right to the chair through the papers, is the better course of action. I think those are there are essentially 3 of the findings I don't believe I can make in this matter. And I'd love to open it up for others, Mr. Balagopalan and then Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think the good cause is a tough call to make here. But I do want to commend OC Waste and Recycling for being proactive and being concerned after they got notified by Edison in seeking the variance. And I think, and also on the repower project that's all going on, so that in the future you don't have to worry about the limitation due to fire. But again, I think as Ms. Pruzak stated, you're not anywhere close to the 200 hours, and you do have an option of filing for ex parte or for emergency once you know you're going to be very close to 200 hours. And I think Ms. Niziwaza indicated they could proactively cut a check and have it ready. The check is normally sometimes good for 6 months, and in the event you need to file for an ex parte or emergency variance, you can file that, and look, having gone through the process, you know what to do now. So I think that would be the recourse. And also I wanted to mention, and I don't know if bringing another rental and putting that as considered circumvention. I'll leave that up to the district, you know. And the other concern, and if you go back and look at the hearings that we had in the past for public agencies for emergency generator, I think you'll see the decisions by the board. You know, I think you were concerned more the board denying, you know, but I think if everything is done and you're proactive and you come and file in a timely manner in a situation like this, I think you will, if you go back and see, you will find that the board has always supported, you know, and I'm not saying that that'll be the case, but you'll see that the board has been appreciative of the fact that the companies file in a timely manner and have got the variance they requested.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to be proactive and concerned for public safety. However, Bulletin 322, the team is going out to all of the agencies. They're going out to anybody who is in that high-risk area. So I don't see it as an imminent danger, especially based on your history of usage. It doesn't come close to that at all of being in a danger position. I also agree with Ms. Pruitt in reference to the fact that it should be an emergency. This is not the tool for what you're concerned about. And in time when that does occur, I believe that, as was mentioned before, this board will be in agreement with the situation that you may be in at that time. And it's all about the timing. I agree that if we grant this, we would be creating a precedent. We would be going down a slippery slope that every agency is going to come in here and ask for the same thing, which really is not, again, the way that it really could and should have been done. When that time happens, I'm sure that we will be supportive of what you are doing, especially I commend you for spending the money, which I know is a lot of money, to go underground. And I appreciate the fact that you're going to get that done by February, hopefully by February. But still, I don't think that we're in any position at this point, and I can't agree that there is good cause. I agree with the rest of my board members that there is no evidence to prove that you're in that situation yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Dr. Bernstein.
I'm not going to reiterate what everybody said. I think everybody's gotten the perspective from the hearing board. But I will take the time to commend you on your proactivity, taking public safety and health concerns at heart. That's what your agency is all about. And I appreciate those efforts, but I agree with my colleagues. I don't think that we have good cause here to go forward.
Thank you. And so I will make a motion at this time. And the motion is in the matter of OC Waste and Recycling, case number 6151-1. I move that we find there is not good cause to move forward at this time with a hearing on the merits in absence of notice to the public. And so we dismiss the petition for interim variance without prejudice, which means you may come back any time where there is imminence. and hopefully that will not happen. And that concludes my motion. Is there a second? Dr. Bernstein seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Balagopalan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Bernstein?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0. I think you've heard everything from us. And good luck, and we hope you will not have to come back for an emergency.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Board members, any other business for today? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
You know how that all came about, right? It had to do with the fires of the PG&E as well as the Malibu fire in Edison. It was big time. So that's why that policy came up. And the CPUC had to sanction it. And they agreed with it and they moved it. And I can't. Hi, we're done. Yeah, we're done. Come get me. Is Pat here? Oh, okay. Oh, you want me to come to you?